Morning, or afternoon, I guess, if you're in the UK. You guys probably are aware already. There has been some breaking news that United are now looking at building a 100,000-seater stadium adjacent to Old Trafford. The task force that was put together back in, I think it was March they put this back together, which was Sir Jim Ratcliffe. It included people like Andy Burnham, Gary Neville, a handful of others. Seb Coe was involved for some reason. They've been looking at plans to either redevelop Old Trafford or to do an entirely new build Old Trafford on the land adjacent to Old Trafford, where all like the shipping containers are and stuff like that at the moment. And what they're saying is they've come up with a preferred option, and the preferred option seems to be new build rather than renovation due to better long-term benefits and minimal disruption during the construction. And I've got mixed feelings about it. On one hand, I don't want to lose Old Trafford. I think having that be the pitch that George Best walked out on, that Duncan Edwards walked out on, have that be the dugouts. All right, the dugout position has changed a few times actually over the recent years. Not just when Ten Hag switched it, but those being the dugouts that Sir Matt Busby sat in, that Sir Alex sat in, that means something, man. I think like a club is tied to its history. Otherwise, why wouldn't you just pick a new club every single season? Do you know what I mean? So the history of the club is so important. It's so vital to who a club is and the identity of a football club that I think like moving to a new stadium is a serious thing to consider. Now, unlike a lot of new stadiums that have been built, we're not even going to change our street address. Like Old Trafford's going to literally be in the same place, just 100 or so meters like to the southeast or something, or to the southwest, whichever direction it is that they end up moving Old Trafford into. They're saying that the cost of this is going to be somewhere in the region of 2 billion, which is double what the cost would be to renovate Old Trafford. And we've seen recently new stadiums and renovated stadiums take on all sorts of different projects. We've seen the Bernabeu have this massive facelift, and it does genuinely look pretty awesome now. You've seen the recent developments that have been going on at Anfield, and polishing a turd comes to mind when I think about what's going on with Anfield. And then you've seen the new Spurs stadium, which I haven't visited yet, but looks absolutely sensational. And everyone I've spoken to that's been to it goes, it's absolutely ridiculous. Lucky enough this weekend to go and visit the SoFi Stadium, which, again, visually quite ridiculous, definitely lacks a little bit of soul. Say the exact same thing for the Allegiant in Las Vegas, which we visited last season. And I would say the best of the new stadiums, the brand new stadiums that I've visited, is San Mamés, which was Athletic Bilbao's. And they've interwoven, quite interestingly, shipping containers, which maybe there's something United could look to do there with shipping containers, considering that we are going to be placing it on a place where all the shipping containers are. And for those of you that wonder why Manchester's got shipping containers when it's 34 miles inland, find out what the ship canal is, and then you'll start to understand the rivalry between Manchester and Liverpool a little bit better. But San Mamés, all of their directors' boxes, all of their executive suites, the doors to those are shipping container doors. Because Bilbao is a big shipping port, and that's what their heritage is about. And San Mamés as a brand new stadium is stunning, but it also feels like it's still got the soul. So I don't know how you do that. I don't know what architect you hire that can build in soul into a club. They have to take elements and inspiration from the current Old Trafford if they're going to redevelop. I would not necessarily want to see an all glass, all metal, big shiny spaceship looking thing like they've got at SoFi. I think if they're going to do it, when you think of Old Trafford, you think of the red brick. And I think that they've got to incorporate the red brick somewhere into it, because that feels like Old Trafford to me. They're supposedly talking of maintaining some of that heritage. And the financing is going to be very interesting. Naming rights, loans. Obviously, they've got there's a big sensitivity to debt with United fans, as there should be. You know, we've been absolutely rinsed, potentially more than any other club in the world, in terms of how we've been handled with the debt that the Glazers left us with. There's talk of some public-private sort of partnership to get it done. Obviously, Jim Ratcliffe mentioned he wanted to build like the Wembley of the North. it's going to remain to be seen how that all comes out. Naming rights wise, I feel like if they built a new stadium, there would be less friction with giving it a new name, as long as it maintained Old Trafford in the title. Like we have the Emirates Old Trafford, which must confuse some people, down the road for the cricket ground. Does anyone call it the Emirates Old Trafford, or do they all just call it Old Trafford? Did anyone call, apart from Sky, who are legally obligated to call it that, does anybody call St James's Park, or did anybody call St James's Park the Sports Direct Arena? I don't think so. I think that if you call it, let's just say Ineos, because I have no idea who else, like the Ineos Old Trafford, does anyone call it the Ineos Stadium, or does anyone just say Old Trafford? And I think with the money that you can get for naming rights, I think you have to consider it. It's not ideal, obviously, but you can't just have ideal. You can't have your cake and eat it. You have to pay the piper at some point, and I think that, yeah, we're probably going to need to do that. They're expecting that the timeline for this is going to take somewhere in the region of 6 years. And supposedly they've been inspired by LA's SoFi Stadium, which was at this weekend, and they want to regenerate sort of that strip of land where the warehouses are and where the shipping containers and all that sort of stuff is, with new businesses, new infrastructure. They probably have some sort of shopping stuff, like all that shopping stuff that's around Wembley. You could easily see that coming into Old Trafford, I think. They're going to be consulting with fans and community leaders. I imagine that means the likes of Must and Duncan Drasdo. And like I said, they're potentially looking for some government involvement in this. There's public-private partnerships. The Prime Minister's been mentioned in this. They're talking about linking Old Trafford and Media City to create some sort of a major hub, and I think that's a quite smart idea. I think that would make a lot of sense. And yeah, they've learnt from visits to SoFi and the Bernabeu and all the rest of that stuff. I think for us as fans, we have to consider a few things. One, the design of it needs to be really, really thought of. There's a lot of talk of the strategic vision, and I think one of the reasons why they've gone for the redevelopment over the rebuild, the new development over the rebuild, is because you've got a more long-term way of setting out this land and maybe implementing some stuff which future-proofs what we're going to do. That might mean you retain the current pitch location and build an academy and women's stadium once you've redeveloped or built the new one. What other sort of amenities are they going to include on there? Because you wouldn't want the Stretford End goal to now be in the car park of a Nando's, would you, going forward? If they could retain the current pitch and build like a small 20,000 seater stadium around it, that would significantly reduce the footprint that took up. You could build a car park on that existing land, use the car park that's already there at the top of East Stand, and then integrate that into the sort of whole campus. I mean, we had the press conference at UCLA and open training was at UCLA, and you just see some of the college facilities that exist in America, and you think, it's actually wild how like one of the most popular teams on earth doesn't have a base that can even fuck with a college football team out in the States. I think the big factors for me are how you pay homage to Old Trafford in its current state and don't lose that sort of tie-in and identity with the new place, and how economically viable is it. We've seen Spurs have struggled financially to get their stadium over the line. They've just got into debt to do it. You saw Arsenal were really limited in the transfer market because they had to make a profit because of part of the way their bank loans were set up to pay for their stadium. So they couldn't go into debt to buy players, and that's why you had that whole thing with Wenger for a long time. So it's really important that in the midst of this sort of on-pitch rebuild, that the off-pitch rebuild doesn't impact the on-pitch ability to compete. But otherwise, I think it's quite exciting. Let me know in the comments what you guys want to see, how you guys want to see it, what's the most important factors for it for you. I'll see you in the next one. Laters.